So one of the most crucial concepts when it comes to relationships, repairing relationships, is the skill of validation. Not only understanding how to validate your partner, but also to reduce the amount that we as partners rely on validation. So in today's video, I want to break down why it's so important to remove the need for external validation from your partner and how it actually brings you and your partner closer together and repairs the relationship long-term. So for those of you who are new, validation is essentially our brain's need to confirm the reality that we experience. Now that sounds actually quite abstract, but basically it's human nature to seek validation. Our lizard brain instinct to need to know that the reality we perceive is valid, that we are not completely insane, that what we are doing makes sense. The problem is in relationships, oftentimes the need for validation from our partner, from external sources, can overtake everything else. And we can start to rely on external validation from our partners, and it can start to push our partners further and further away. And the reason why I'm saying this is because when it comes to building, growing, and especially relationship repair, validation is one of the key concepts to understand and learn and to build our skills around. So I want to talk about this need for external validation. Most people don't even realize that they are looking for external validation, and how removing this need for external validation, especially validation from your partner, is going to repair the relationship in a very, very deep way long-term. So there's two kind of main reasons why your brain needs validation. The first reason is evolution. So for 99% of human history, being cast out of the tribe, right? If you think about the caveman times, being cast out of the tribe was a death sentence. So for humans, evolution has developed a neurological alarm system where external validation is the tribe's way of saying you are safe here. So being validated by your tribe is part of our lizard brain. It's part of our human nature. We look for validation because it brings a sense of safety. You're not going to be sent out into the woods by yourself to die. You are safe within this tribe. And this is the thing, invalidation, social rejection, triggers the same brain region that processes physical pain. So we feel a sense of physical pain when we are being invalidated. So our brains look for validation. But there's the second part, which is our neurochemical reward system. So when you experience validation, so when you have someone saying to you, hey, you're doing great, you're wonderful, you're good looking, I'm never going to leave you, I'm going to be with you forever, I will love you always. When you experience that validation, that you are accepted as a person and that your ideas are valid and sound and reasonable, your brain releases a cocktail of neurotransmitters that make you feel secure and accomplished. Some of these chemicals are like dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. These are the reward and relationship chemicals that our brain releases, essentially. So there's the two sort of main needs for validation that we look for as human beings. The problem is that in relationships, we can start to seek validation. And there's two main ways that we seek validation. There's the explicit ways and there's the implicit ways. And it's really important to understand this because a lot of people don't really notice that they're doing it. Once you start to understand how the need for validation manifests, then we can start to understand the impact that it has and how to start undoing it. So as we go through this, I want you to think and really ask yourself, are some of these things what I do in my relationship or with my partner or with my ex-partner? So the explicit ways that we can seek validation is looking for reassurance. So a lot of people don't realize they're doing it, but their ask sort of variations are, are we good? Are you mad at me? You still love me? Over small shifts in relationship temperature. Now, in isolation, this is not a big deal, right? It doesn't really make that much of a difference. But what people don't realize is that oftentimes they can do it very, very often. And what this means is that it shows your partner or your ex-partner that you don't really know the relationship very well, and you're treating them as a human emotional thermometer. You're basically saying, hey, what is the temperature? What is the temperature? What is the temperature? Rather than showing up as a leader and actually understanding the relationship as a whole. It shows a lack of leadership because you're constantly asking for reassurance. But the other ways that we can explicitly seek validation is fishing for compliments. So sometimes people can intentionally put themselves down, oh, I look so terrible. I look like shit. My presentation at work was terrible. I'm awful. A lot of people can do this without even really thinking about it, with the sole intention of trying to get your partner to contradict you and lift your chin up, right? To make you feel better. The problem with this is that this can become quite wallowy and pushes your partner further and further away. This usually becomes quite explicit in trying to repair a relationship, where let's say you've done something that was hurtful or ineffective or whatever it is, and you're constantly dragging up the past. You're constantly putting yourself down. Oh, I don't deserve you. I really screwed up. I'm just such a terrible person. It doesn't help the situation. And oftentimes it's trying to get your partner to say, no, don't worry about it. It's okay. I forgive you. So this can be a very explicit way that we look for validation. But sometimes it can manifest in what psychologists call protest behaviors. This is picking fights, slamming doors, silent treatment. These are protesting the relationship. Not because you feel like the relationship is done or you want to be out of the relationship, but it's there to see if your partner is going to chase you, is going to apologize, is going to say, yeah, I'm so sorry, I love you, or let's figure this out. It's trying to get your partner to chase you and prove that you matter to them. So this can be another way that we can seek validation, is basically causing a fight, causing some sort of conflict, and waiting for our partner to come back and chase us to make us feel validated. But it can also happen in just general day-to-day. Sort of, I've put this down as digital bombardment. So just constantly texting, double texting, triple texting when they don't reply fast enough, sending really long emotional soliloquies, poems, and all this like deep and meaningful stuff to force a deep conversation over text message, especially when they are pulling away, when they're not interested in having that conversation at the moment, trying to force them into a conversation in order for you to receive the validation that you're looking for. So these are the explicit ways that we can seek validation, basically chasing our validation from our partner. So this explicit neediness is a very high anxiety behavior, right? It's very loud, it's urgent, and it immediately signals to your partner that you don't feel secure in your own skin. You don't feel confident in the way that you do things. And you're so worried about your partner pulling away that you can't handle it, and you need to just find this validation externally. But there's also subtle ways that we can seek validation. This is the covert chasing actions, which is emotional surveillance is the first one. So this is becoming like an FBI profiler of your partner's behavior. So you're constantly tracking their tone of voice, the speed of their text replies, their body language. You look at how long they're looking at their phone. You're constantly asking what's wrong. The second that they show any sign of feeling maybe a bit down or exhausted or whatever it is, you become this hyper-vigilant profiler of your partner, because any drop in their baseline energy, their temperature, feels like a threat to your safety. So you're constantly overthinking their reactions. And this is especially problematic when it comes to repairing a relationship, because it becomes emotionally exhausting to your partner. It puts all this cognitive energy on them when they're just trying to live their life, but you're constantly surveilling them and they feel like they have to perform or you need something from them. But then there's also martyrdom. And again, when it comes to relationship repair, this can happen very often. Over-delivering, over-compromising, playing the caretaker, doing things for your partner constantly on the guise of sort of generosity, or I'm just being generous. But oftentimes it comes as a manipulation tactic to make yourself indispensable. So this is where you love bomb, you overgive to the relationship, but it is a way of seeking validation, because ultimately you're doing this because you want your partner to come back to you. You want your partner to head towards you. So it's not from a place of being generous, because you start to resent them for not matching your effort. And this is one of the biggest problems in relationship repair, is oftentimes people perform these actions that are doing it just for their partner to come back to them. And then when it's not immediately matched, they get resentful and they start to get pissed off, basically, because it's like, well, I paid extra child support. I bought you this car. I bought you this ring. I did this. I did this. You should give me something back. That is not a gift, right? This is not some generosity gift. You did it expecting something back. And that's the difference. So you start to resent them for not matching your effort because your giving wasn't a gift. It was a down payment on validations. Basically, you were doing it because you were looking for something back. You're looking for that validation of you as a partner back. And when they don't shower you with affection, you start to feel hollow and you start to feel angry. So this is a covert seeking validation. But then there's also chameleoning, which I've done a longer video about, which I'll link to up above and in the description down below. This is where you slowly dissolve your own boundaries, your own hobbies, your political views, your opinions to align with theirs. You basically pretend that you are them. You stop being an individual and you become a mirror. So you start to agree with everything that they say. If they hate a movie that you loved, you suddenly start to change your mind. You start to agree with them and don't formulate your own opinion. You start to abandon your friends, you start to abandon your passions, and you start to master their interests. You start to only do the things that they want to do. And you start to sacrifice your edge, your individuality, to remain safe in their approval. You basically start to become them. And as I mentioned before, in a relationship, having differences is really, really important. Because if you are both the same person, if there's two people in a relationship that are the same, one of you is redundant, right? So chameleoning is another way of seeking validation. Basically being like, I'm becoming you, so therefore you should stay with me because I'm exactly you. But here's one of the biggest ones, especially when it comes to trying to get your ex back or trying to repair your marriage, is this strategic vulnerability. When relationships go through a rough patch, people can start to look inward, become more in touch with their emotions, start to become more emotionally intelligent, which is great. It's really important. But oftentimes, when this comes at the time of a tough time in the relationship, this can be weaponized. So weaponizing your trauma, your stress, your sadness to manufacture artificial intimacy. So bringing up a past wound or a current crisis at a time when your partner starts to seem distant can be a way of trying to get validation from them. So they're starting to be distant and start to pull away a little bit, or maybe there's some hot and cold behavior. Bringing up something that happened to you in your past or even within the relationship without processing it yourself can oftentimes be a way of manufacturing intimacy, basically getting attention and validation, seeking validation from your partner. This is where the goal isn't healing. The goal is to trigger their protective instincts so that they are forced to hold you, to comfort you, to feel for you and validate your place in their life. And this can be one of the things that I can see quite often is people starting to go through therapy and then suddenly trauma dumping, just laying out every single emotion that they ever had, feeling guilty or piling on all of this emotional baggage, putting all of that onto your partner in order for them to provide the comfort and cognitive effort to make you feel better. So all of these can be the very subtle ways that we seek validation. So this is the way that seeking validation can manifest itself. But why? Why do we do this? Why do we seek validation? Oftentimes it comes from a place of the way that you perceive yourself and the way that you perceive your partner. If you perceive yourself as low value and you perceive your partner as high value, oftentimes you want to bridge that gap between you both. So you look for a high value person to tell you that you are high value, to raise you up, right? So the need for external validation is when the perception of yourself and your partner is extreme. So your partner is up on a pedestal and you are the lowest of the low. That's the extreme distance between you and your partner in your mind. So it's your perception. And this can manifest in different ways. So on one end of the spectrum, it can be my partner's opinion is the only thing that matters. They are so unbelievably perfect that their opinion of me is the only thing that matters. So whatever they say, what I need to do, who I need to be, how I need to change, whatever it is, that's the only thing that matters. And I'm just going to change in order to do everything for them because I just don't want them to go. So this is what we fall into, the yes man illusion, which I've spoken about on this channel, which is essentially you end up doing all of these things that we mentioned before. You start to become the yes man to the relationship. Whatever they say, you never disagree with it. You never come up with a counterpoint. You never discuss it. Yes, 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 yes. I'll do whatever it is. But then that starts to build resentment and sends you down the other end of the spectrum, which is where you start to feel resentful towards them and then go to the opposite end of the spectrum, which is my partner's opinion is worthless. I don't need them. It's ridiculous. I've said yes to everything. I've done everything for them. They don't respect me. Their opinion doesn't mean anything anymore. And you go all the way to the other end of the spectrum and fall for what we call the lone wolf illusion. So this is where I don't need anyone. I don't need any relationship. I don't need this person. Screw everything. And oftentimes people ping pong back and forth between these two things. But these are two extremes. Having validation from a partner is normal, but being able to settle in the middle of understanding that your partner's opinion is valid and helpful, that is a healthy perspective. It means that your partner maybe has some good points when they criticize you. It would be nice to hear nice things from your partner, but it's not essential. This is something that we can generate ourselves. So this is the kind of healthy middle ground that we're looking for. So looking to break the external validation loop is really, really important. When you rely on external validation, it becomes quite inefficient. And when you're looking for external validation from your partner, it becomes a feedback loop. And breaking this feedback loop is going to be really important. And I'm going to dig into why this happens. So this need for validation comes from an insecurity in yourself, right? You need someone to tell you that you're good, that everything's okay. So it comes from a place of insecurity. And what happens is usually the insecurity loop starts with you feel insecure. Oftentimes this insecurity comes from your past experiences, things that have happened to you, whether it's in school, in previous relationships, but it usually comes from the past. So you feel insecure. It comes from the past and your brain starts to look for a pattern that you're not good enough, that your opinions don't matter, that someone is going to leave you. So you start to have insecure thoughts. You start to see the world through insecurity. It comes from your own confirmation bias, essentially. You're looking for evidence that what you feel is true. So I feel insecure, therefore I need to look for validation that what I feel is true. So you start to collect your own evidence that you should feel insecure. So essentially you're looking for validation externally that your feelings make sense presently, if that makes sense. So you feel insecure, you see the world through insecurity, you look for evidence to confirm your feelings. And then what happens in a relationship is you take actions to avoid insecure feelings. So you're trying to move away from the pain of insecurity. So you start to ask for reassurance. You start to look for validation from your partner. You start to look for validation that you're okay, that you're good, that they're not going to leave. You start to blame your partner for not performing those actions. So let's say you say, hey, I need you to tell me that you love me every morning. I need you to constantly reassure me about these things. And when they don't do that, you start to blame them. You put them in charge of your feelings. And this can lead to trying to control your partner's actions. So you take these actions to avoid these insecure feelings, but you put everything externally. And then what happens is that your partner starts to feel more distant because you're putting all of the work on making you feel okay, making you feel valid onto them. So they start to feel more distance. So they start to try and move away from the pain of having to reassure you all the time. So they start to avoid conversations. They start to feel less connected. They start wanting connection more, but elsewhere. So they still want to have a connection with a human being, right? They want to have the relationship, but they feel like they can't have it with you. So they start to feel more distance away from. And because your partner starts to feel more distant, you start to feel more insecure because you're looking for that confirmation that you have a reason to be insecure. So it becomes a loop, right? Your partner gets more distant, you start to feel more insecure, you start to double down on these actions, everything gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Everything becomes more exaggerated. And this is what pattern a lot of people can fall into, is this constant feedback loop where it grows and grows and grows and becomes a spiral, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the more insecure you feel, the more you end up spiraling into the extreme version of this loop. So how do we break it? It's really important to break out of this need for external validation. Not only will it have a massive impact on your relationship and repairing your relationship, but it has an impact on your life in general. The more that you are able to break out of this loop, easier life becomes, because you're starting to put all of the things back into your control. There's nothing wrong with having an insecure feeling. So a lot of people feel like they just shouldn't have these feelings, but this is normal. This is a normal human feeling to have. Feeling insecure, everyone has it, no matter how successful, no matter how good looking, whatever it is, people have insecure feelings. These pop up and can see the world through insecurity. Always look for our own evidence. However, the actions that we take will have an impact. When you take actions to address those insecure feelings, and we'll talk more about this in a second, but being able to observe your feelings, being able to create reinterpretations, looking for counter evidence, creating counter evidence, changing those actions onto things that are in your control breaks that loop, because then your partner feels closer because you're not doing the actions that you were doing before. So your partner feels like there's a more secure emotional environment. And this is something that we talk about a lot on this channel, is building a strong, high standard emotional environment for your partner to start to feel closer. And when it comes to relationship repair, being able to cultivate that environment is really, really important. It's the key to repairing a relationship. Being able to have more conversations, for your partner to feel more connected, wanting to connect more with you because you have built the strong emotional environment is going to break this loop. So it doesn't feed into feeling insecure again. So it breaks this loop. And before I jump into how we do this, this is exactly what I work on with my members, is breaking out of these loops, especially when it comes for the need for external validation. This is going to help to build this strong emotional environment for you and your partner to be able to have conversations that are healthy, that are useful, and that bring you together, that create reattraction within the relationship. This doesn't happen in one go. It happens over time, but it is through building the right skills in order to do this and in order to show your partner that this new version of the relationship can be something much, much bigger, much, much stronger than it was before. Showing your partner through actions, this new version of the relationship is going to be much, much stronger, much more beneficial to both of you than the previous version of the relationship. And if you do want to join me, work together and start to cultivate the next version of your relationship, repair your relationship, repair your marriage, then join my relationship bootcamp. This is where all my members start to learn the fundamentals of understanding how to start repairing your relationship and rebuilding it. I'll drop a link in the description if you want to grab your spot and join us. So how? How do we start breaking this external validation loop today in order to start building reattraction and start cultivating that emotional environment for you and your partner? So learning self-validation. This is our own internal feedback loop. This goes back to fulfilling our own needs biologically. So our brain still has that need for validation, but rather than trying to find it externally, we're able to build it internally, being able to be self-sufficient in cultivating it ourselves. This is essentially biologically satisfying yourself, which sounds terrible. I have no other way of putting it. So self-validation relies on engaging our prefrontal cortex. This is our seat of logic, of self-reflection and long-term planning. This is what our prefrontal cortex is great with. Being able to consciously acknowledge your own worth, your own progress. This allows your prefrontal cortex to intercept the other feelings that are going on. It sends inhibitor signals, so signals that stop or minimize the other signals that are going on from the amygdala, from your emotional sort of center, your emotional panic button. Your prefrontal cortex needs to engage in order to prevent that internal feedback loop from happening. So instead of waiting for an external dopamine hit, instead of waiting for your partner to validate you, self-validation allows you to consciously stimulate your own reward pathways, basically creating your own rewards yourself. By shifting your focus over to your own values, your own accomplishments, and your own self-worth, this is effectively telling your nervous system, we are safe, we are capable, and we're on the right track. And it means that we're not looking for it from elsewhere. So to be able to bypass our brain's default setting of looking for external approval, you have to intentionally build an alternate neural pathway, basically a different rewiring of your brain. So there's a 4-step loop to manually hack your reward system, shifting the job of soothing your amygdala, your panic center in your brain, away from this need for tribal approval back to your own prefrontal cortex. So the very first step is intercepting the urge. This is building awareness. So the moment that you finish a task, make a mistake, or feel insecure at all, your lizard brain's programming is going to instinctively scan for external feedback, checking for likes on Instagram, waiting for a boss to comment on the work, asking your partner, was that okay? Was that good? Did you like that? Am I doing something bad? So here we need to catch ourselves in that moment, becoming more aware of when we are looking for external validation, when we feel insecure. Being able to physically pause and recognize that urge is going to help you to start breaking this loop. Recognizing the urge to seek external confirmation, this external validation that we look for, being able to recognize it as just a biological survival reflex, not an actual emergency. So awareness is the very first step in breaking this loop. The next step is acknowledging the data. This is naming the situation. So to calm your amygdala, the emergency center in your brain, you need to feed your brain objective, judgment-free facts. You need to bring in logic with your prefrontal cortex. So this isn't about toxic positivity, not just saying, I'm the best, but focusing on the concrete reality. So being able to internally state exactly what you did or what you're feeling, but in your head mainly, being able to name what happened, whether it's the feeling or the thought, being able to name it and acknowledge that data as an objective fact. So for example, I just made a presentation. I spent hours on it and I put in a lot of work. I feel worried that it's not good enough. These are objective facts. It's not saying that the feeling is true, but it is true that you felt that. Or as an example, I had a conversation with my ex-partner and I felt worried about whether it went well or not. This is objective facts. It's not saying that the feeling is fact, but it's saying that it is fact that you felt that feeling, if that makes sense. It sounds like a tongue twister. So the objective fact is that you felt it, not that the feeling reflects reality. Then we need to link it to an internal anchor. So this is your value alignment. So instead of measuring your worth by their reaction, by an external reaction, instead of measuring your worth by what your partner says, measuring it by your values. Why does this effort matter to you? So for example, let's say you had a conversation with your partner, you're worried about whether it helped reconnect or not, being able to reflect it back to your internal values. So connecting your action to a personal standard, like growth. So for example, I had a conversation with my ex-partner. I was worried about whether it built the connection or not. Looking at it, I think that I validated to quite a high standard, but I also believe that there's some specific things that I could do better. In this way, you're validating yourself, saying, I did it to a standard that I'm happy with, but I would also like to improve. I didn't necessarily get the reaction that I wanted from my ex, but I still had that conversation anyway, because I want to make sure that I'm improving the way that I do things and that I'm constantly moving forward and growing. So you're linking it to something internal to yourself. You're aligning it with your values and then let it marinate. So our brains are like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. Our brains are constantly trying to move away from pain and towards pleasure. The problem is that what we see as moving away from pain, our brains will do more to try to move away from pain than it will do to move towards positive ones. So it's really important to spend time actually sitting with the feeling of your own approval, being able to take a deep breath and letting your nervous system register that you are safe, you are capable, and you are approved of by you. I think that I did a good job in that conversation. I think that I did it to a much higher standard than I did in the past. And that's really important to me. That is something that I value. It's really important not to skip this step. If you do skip this step, your brain is going to immediately dump the self-validation process and go right back to looking for external praise. So it's important to be able to sit with your own approval. This isn't saying that you're perfect. This is saying that what I did was to a good standard. And this loop in action is going to help you to build your own internal feedback loop, to remove the need for external validation. So notice the urge to ask for approval, stating the objective facts of what you achieved, tie it to why it matters to you personally, and then pause, getting used to pausing for a few seconds to let the feeling sink in. By consistently running this loop and getting into a habit of building this loop within your day, not just for your relationship, but for the things that you do, you're training your brain's reward systems to recognize that the safest, most reliable source of all of these chemicals that it wants isn't external to you. It's not from your partner. It's within you. Now, that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but this is psychology. This is exactly how we can train our brain and rewire our brain and our habits in order to focus on things that are self-generated. In this way, we become a lot more emotionally stable because we're always tying our emotional needs to ourselves. What this does is it allows you to self-generate your own validation, essentially raising your own self-esteem, breaking your own insecurity, and allowing you to generate all of this by yourself. Once you can generate something by yourself, you stop asking for it from somewhere else. If you're able to generate a lot of money by yourself, it means that you don't need to ask for it from other people. You're self-sufficient, and this self-sufficiency is what builds attraction. And especially when it comes to repairing a relationship, it rebuilds this reattraction in comparison to your old self. Your partner will see that you have built your own processes to generate things by yourself. This will stop you from asking questions like, do you love me? Are we okay? What's going on? All of these things. It shows your partner a much stronger process to self-generate, which means that you need less from your partner. And it allows your partner to step into a very high standard emotional environment to be able to start reconsidering this new version of the relationship. This is really important. So that is the first thing that we need to do, is being able to fill our own emotional account. So this stops treating our partner like a vending machine for your self-worth. It stops you asking for things from them, for them to reassure you, for them to tell you that you're doing good. As we said, when you look to them to feel good about yourself, you're handing over your power on a silver platter to them. You're basically saying, hey, I can't do this without you. You have to put in the work for me. So it's time to take the keys back. But the second part of this is starving this need for validation. This anxiety where validation, this need for validation comes from, it is very loud, it's very desperate, and it's really, really unattractive. True power, when we talk about leadership in relationships, true power is very, very quiet. So we need to cut off this supply line of needy behaviors that are pushing our partners away or our ex-partners away. This allows us to start building instead of begging. So you can't attract someone back into a sinking ship. Taking the steps to construct a life that is so compelling, so high value. And I'm not talking about financial value. I'm talking about real intrinsic value, the emotional value, the processes, and the systems that we build for ourselves that is so vibrant that staying away from the life that you're building feels like a massive missed opportunity. People get mistaken on this idea of high value male, especially this high value man kind of stuff. People make a lot of mistakes when it comes to this. They fall for these myths that high value is all about the external things, the cars, the money, the business, the careers, the houses. All of these external things are not what is considered high value. They can be there, but they're usually an outcome from high value processes. The things that you do day in, day out, emotionally and logically, are the things that actually build your intrinsic value. And that's what becomes attractive. And that's what reattracts your partner back to you. But most of all, being able to execute massive, absolute decisions. So one of the biggest killers of attraction is indecision. This often comes from this insecurity loop that we have, this need for external validation. Being unable to make choices because you are constantly looking for reassurance that what you're going to do is going to be okay. And this keeps people sat on the fence, being very indecisive, and it leads to indecision about the relationship. Being able to say, I want to pursue this relationship and here's the way that I'm going to do it, is actually going to reattract your partner back faster than if you are sat on the fence, flopping around, trying to figure out what to do. So I've actually done a deeper dive video on this, on the indecision traps that kill relationships. If you're constantly waiting for your partner to give you permission to do the things that you want to do to make the growth that you want to make, then you've already lost. So start pulling the trigger on your own destiny, on the direction that you want to have forward. So like I said, I won't dig into it here. I'll leave you with that deeper dive video and I'll see you over there.